Today I wanted to talk about Barbara O Neill and some of the shorts and different videos that I've been seeing from her lately. I can't really say that I like what she has to say. This isn't a hate video. This is how is she coming to this conclusions video after some of the predecessors have completely different opinions. And let's get into it. All right, so Barbara O Neill, I wanted to talk about this because I've been seeing a lot of stuff that she's been saying lately, and it is just not great. This is actually, there's a trigger. I'm going to put a trigger warning here. Let's start watching this. It is cringeworthy. This or trigger warning. I am putting the trigger warning out now, so you were warned.
And many people having bread and cereal for breakfast, by mid-morning they're wanting something else, so they
Kind of how it works.
reach for, and we're just going to say cakes, etc., because if we say everything.
All right, so here's the thing. I've already done a video about this. I'm just diving a little deeper in this video. This woman lists cakes, etc., as carbohydrates. It is such nonsense. If I can find that video, I'm going to cut this portion out. Cakes, etc., is almost always like 50 or more percent fat. All right, so what happens with that, right? So you go into something called the Randall cycle. The Randall cycle is going to make it so your body cannot get the carbs into the cells because there's fat coating the receptor site. So it keeps dumping insulin until you eventually get your carbohydrates into the cells. The fat dissipates finally. It's not blocking the receptor sites. What happens when you have insulin in your bloodstream? You can't burn fat. What happens when you can't burn fat? You keep the fat that you've already stored. What happens when you eat these cakes that is labeled as carbohydrates? You go into the Randall cycle. There you go. You got it. So this woman who thinks, this woman's preaching this nonsense.
There's not enough room on the board for it when you go into muffins and croissants and donuts.
Exactly. Here we go. How does that have any relation to carbohydrates? That is fat with carbohydrates in it. It's not it.
Etc.
Unreal.
etc. So we're just going to put etc. Also, pasta.
Do most people have fat-free pasta, or do they put a lot of olive oil on it and meat? Nope. Yep, that's what they do. So that's going to put you in the Randall cycle.
I'm a fifth-generation Australian Scottish descent. I didn't know what pasta and pizza was till I was
Ignorance is no excuse, lady.
about 18. So what did I grow up with? Sausages or chops, mashed potatoes, frozen peas or beans every single night of the week.
And she's going to blame the potatoes. The potatoes were the reason that Australia is fat, which I'm going to link all these videos that I'm using here down below, which I usually forget to do. Hopefully I remember this time. The first like 3 minutes was her going on about even more nonsensical stuff. Now, I'm not going to say that everything she says is ridiculous. The salt thing might have some merit, might not. The rebounding, I 100% agree with. So I'm cherry picking here, just like everybody else.
Sunday when Mum would do a roast lamb, and everyone I knew ate like that. Our relatives ate like that, the neighbours ate like that. As a fifth-generation Australian, I grew up in a little Presbyterian church. Everyone in the church ate like that. I came to the conclusion as a child that everyone in the whole world ate like
My hair is triggered already.
that, but it's not quite true, is it? And when I was about 16, I had a boyfriend who was about 19, and he had a friend who was a vegetarian. I'd never heard of such a thing. I actually had never even heard of brown bread. So this was real traditional Australian. Rice, I'd never had rice.
Now that, that makes you fat. When you think of Asians, let's look some up. Tokyo crowds I've looked into. Do we see all the fat people here? A little small. I mean, this guy might have a little gut on him, but that might be his jacket. We seeing a lot of fat people here? Huh? Let's go to Kenya. Oh, now they're fat. And what do they eat? Like corn, rice, potatoes? I don't know.
I don't think I went to a Chinese restaurant till I was about 18.
And I'm sure they were fat.
That's the first time I ate
Fattest
rice.
people in Australia.
Potatoes, well, we ate potatoes every meal.
The Irish, which I come from, used to eat, and she's Scottish, so she should know this, used to eat primarily, if not exclusively, potatoes. And when they did that, they were thriving, and they were skinny, and their population soared. And if you look at the high starch eaters, like, I don't know, most of Africa, most of Asian countries, most of South America, what do we think of when we think of like India or Asian or like a China? Is there a lot of population? What do you need to have a lot of population? You need to have your hormones, your fertility working. What do we think of in America right now, in this phase of America that we're in right now with the Kentucky Fried Chicken life everywhere? Our populations are going down. China now has adopted the Western diet. And because of that, and because of, other things going on over there, because of this, they're actually going to be running into the problem, I think by 2030, everything happens 2030, that they're going to have so many people retired or of retirement age that it's almost, if not going to collapse their system. They didn't used to have this problem when they were eating 90% white rice and they were skinny, and they had, if you look at the China study, they couldn't find people with diseases. They had to manufacture it.
And last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallized acid.
And all right, this one, she calls it an acid. She might want to go back to chemistry. pH of sugar is 7. What does that mean? It's neutral. All right, and she completely fails to mention the fact that fatty acids and amino acids are actually acids. And she talks about how carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, but she fails to mention that protein is actually amino acids and that fatty acids are actually lipids, and they're broken down into that. So it's a little weird, and I've seen a couple of her videos. I've never seen her actually mention this. So I don't know. I don't know if she's trying to avoid the fact that they're actually acids. Chemistry class here.
Extracted from the sugarcane plant. And as we have looked at this, we've also acknowledged that I don't think anyone chose to eat that way. It's just fast.
No, we run 90% off sugar. When I, because she's going to go into the protein and the fat thing. When I ate that way, I got to 405 pounds, the way she's telling people to eat.
It's just there. And we're such a fast society today. Here it is. And we showed how when all of these things break down in the body, they break down to the singular structure of glucose. Our gastrointestinal tract is a hollow tube, and anything that goes into that hollow tube is not part of you or me until it gets broken down into tiny little particles, then it's absorbed into the blood, then it becomes part of you and me. The Bible says in Leviticus 17:11, the life of the flesh is in the blood, because it is the blood that carries the nutrients here.
This woman is being pushed so hard now. I don't know where she's coming from.
The glucose is sent is to the cell. The second place it is sent, because only so much can go through the energy cycles. Then it is stored as glycogen. We looked at this morning and how that's particularly useful for the diabetic, having these little, well, it's useful for everyone because they're little molecules of glucose sitting in the muscle cell. And that's why the best place to, or the best time to exercise is early morning, Because in early morning, when you're starting to move, some people say, well, how are we going to get fuel to actually exercise? It's your glycogen stores already sitting in your muscle cell. And when the cell needs it...
So you want to get up and you want to use your storage immediately to do exercise. You know, Pritikin talked about this, about how there's actually more fat in the blood system when you wake up in the morning because of the fasting state. And it was actually bad for your heart to do this because it actually puts the fat into the heart and to the arteries. So it's not a very good idea. We're talking about Pritikin, who, after he shot himself, they did an autopsy and they found that this 65-year-old man had the arteries in the nervous system of a 13-year-old. So I'm going to take his advice, not his shooting it.
It's plucked and it's released. Amazing process. But on the high carbohydrate diet, and this is what a lot of people don't realise, especially when people go on a weight loss diet and stop all the fat, yeah? Fat-free this, fat-free that, fat-free, fat-free, fat-free.
I don't know, where do you see this? Where do we see this fat-free anything? It's high fat, high protein, everything these days.
And yet what are they eating? Lots of carbohydrate.
Bullshit. If you are eating donuts, muffins, cakes, and all the other stuff, you are eating so much fat. I don't even know how you can call it a carbohydrate. Even if we go over to the potatoes, the rice, the pizza, the pasta, what do people have with that stuff? They have butter, buttermilk, milk. The list goes on. Bread, everybody puts butter on their toast.
Do you know fat gives the feeling of satiation or...
In the last video I did of this Barbara O Neill, I don't agree with this at all. When you put fat on something, at least with me, I turn into a bottomless pit. Like in July, I think it was for 4th of July, my mom or it was my sister. She made this cowboy caviar, and I try desperately to go over there with my own stuff. But it was calling my name. It's like, dude, Ryan, we're over here. We've got 6 or 7 avocados in this thing. You're going to really like this one. And I actually don't have a lot of food cravings. But for whatever reason, there's certain fat things like, you know, like Oreos or cookies and the carbohydrates she's talking about, or avocados, nuts, whatever. I mean, how many people go into a bowl of cashews and just have one? I mean, come on. It was calling my name. I looked like a cartoon. I was just forking this stuff down. I'm like, oh, it's so good. It's a bottomless pit. I have no idea what the satiation thing she's talking about.
Satisfaction. And the best weight loss diet is a diet that stops your hunger. And
be a breatharian.
Fat stops the hunger. So what's happening on this high carbohydrate
this piece of hair
diet?
is rebelling.
People have eliminated fat.
Like, nope.
And they're eating lots and lots and lots
carbs.
of this, not realizing that that excess glucose, once we've filled up the energy cycle, we've filled up the glycogen stores, and so now the body sends it to the fat cells.
Right. All right. So here we go with an actual doctor who has had patients for what, 50 years? An actual doctor. So let's go to this.
Couple extra tomatoes. You can
old school McDougall.
Green pepper here. Now you got to be a little careful with the potato salad and some of the other salads because they're loaded with mayonnaise and oils. I like to add a little. Okay, maybe I did order a little too much. But you know, even if I ate all this, it's not going to do me any harm.
Oh no.
If you're not a vegetarian, I'd like you to try eating like one for just one evening. I guarantee you're going to feel better. I'd like to thank Sizzler for their quality.
I interviewed McDougall. He said, it's not going to turn to fat. Dr. John McDougall. I don't know what this lady is, but she's lying.
And on this high carbohydrate diet, what's happening to Americans and Australians? They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, it's one of the most dangerous fats because what the body does is it stores it in the probably areas of the body that's not used a lot, maybe the arms, the belly, the hips, the thighs, and then when that gets all filled up, then it starts to go to the internal organs, weighing them down.
Mm.
And in the book, Wheat Belly, notice the title of the book, Wheat Belly, Dr. William Davis, he shows that sugar particularly, sugar and the hybridized wheat, and the hybridized wheat is...
Possibly the hybridized wheat is an issue, so just get it from countries that don't use it.
Found in most breads, cakes.
But it's not going to turn to fat. It's just not going to digest. It's just glue.
Eggs, cereals, pastas, pizzas. Because it gets the blood sugar level up so high, so fast, as we looked at this morning, then very quickly it's dumped as a visceral fat on the belly. And in the book Wheat Belly, I think the word wheat belly he uses in just about...
Visceral fat is fat that's around the organ. Subcutaneous fat is fat that's under the skin.
At every page, showing this process. And another fact, another very misunderstood fact, is that glucose burns at 4 calories
This one's especially fun.
per gram, whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Now this piece of information, which is fact, is in just about every weight loss book as proof that if you want to lose weight, don't eat the fat. It's going to give you more than twice the calories. But what the people don't understand...
Yeah, what you should do is you should eat some fat to get rid of more fat. That's what you...
understand is what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. And if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat.
And this whole caloric system is based on boiling of water, heat transfer of water. It's thermogenesis. We are not we don't get to boiling temperatures. So I don't know how they can translate all of this into reality.
It's going to give you more than twice the units of energy compared to glucose. But if you're eating more calories than you can burn, yes, it's going to be stored.
Or you could just dump it out. Like, no. It's just so...
That's why
people act like the body is like just an idiot.
One of the best things that...
Now, if you're on the Taco Bell diet, of course, yeah, it's not going to go well for you. But if you're eating normal human food...
you can do for weight loss...
My family back in the day, you know, people that I grew up with, this hair, where is it? Camera. Were never overweight unless they were following advice like this.
Loss is to eat breakfast like a king. I have to admit that I think I eat lunch like a king and breakfast like a queen, but whatever. And sometimes the queen eats as much as the king. Lunch like a queen, and then tea like a pauper, or you call it supper, yeah? I think that when I say tea, you probably think I mean a cup of tea, yeah? But we call nation, you go into the gas station, I don't think anyone planned it, it's just this vast society. And some people say, it's the only time I've got time. Well, there's wonderful things called slow.
She's talking here about eating a heavy breakfast, heavy lunch, and then barely anything for supper. I can see that when Arnold was always into that. Some people think that it works. Some people don't think that it works. That one, you know, I don't know.
And one mother said to me,
here's the thing. She talks about, you know, you eat all your heavy meals and then you go immediately to sleep. But every single animal on the planet does that. If you think, like, if people have dogs or if people have a cat, they eat a real heavy meal and then they go sleep How will we be any different?
I put my millet on at night, so by morning when I get up, there it is, hot, ready to eat. She said I wash my slow cooker and then I put my soaked beans that I've rinsed and brought to the boil and rinsed again, put them in, put the vegetables and put the slow cooker on again. She's a homeschool mum. She says, because I feed the children so well in the morning, how does she feed them? She feeds them a high fibre diet. All your plant foods have fibre. She feeds them generous proteins.
All right, so here we go. Generous proteins.
What are the proteins?
This woman is so into protein, and I'm going to get into that in a second.
Nuts, seeds are your best proteins, and healthy fats. Healthy fats are found in your nuts, your seeds, your coconut oil, olive oil.
Now, if you watched Goldner, she would say that all of this is bad for you.
The two oils that have stood the test of time. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to get to somebody else now. I've already featured this video in another video I did. I'm not going to get too into it.
If you talk about it right before lunch, it just makes you feel bad. So I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and we'll move on. So I come from a school of public health, and we think about aging as the public health challenge of our time. This is WHO data showing that by 2050, the number of people aged 60 or over is expected to double. And in fact, there are already some countries where 1 in 5 people are 60 years.
Yeah, I mean, China is
older.
really going to be in a bad
So why
shape.
is this a problem? Well, aging itself drives all of the risks of getting old. It makes it unpleasant and extremely costly on a societal level. Cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular diseases. Aging is the prime risk factor for all of them. So if one is trying to envision public health strategies to addressing these, they're not going to take a medical approach and simply try to cure cancer. You'll then just die of diabetes or heart disease because these conditions come as a function of age. Instead, the thinking is if one could target the process of aging itself, then you would potentially address all of these diseases at the same time. So that's the thinking in the aging field currently, that is possible. So what are these approaches? What are interventional approaches that we could use to understand the aging process and target it and try to address these aging-related diseases? Well, this is one of the oldest ones in the biomedical literature that we heard about earlier. It's called calorie restriction. And it was first discovered by a nutritionist, Clyde McKay, in New York. And as you can see here, this rat was kept at or near the point of starvation for its entire life. And what you're seeing here is the longevity, not plotted as a percentage alive, but actually of their body weights. So this is...
I'm not into this animal studies, but this is what we've got.
The ad libitum fed. These animals were on a nutritionally complete diet, and they were allowed ad libitum access to food. You can see them grow early in their life. They reach weight stability. And by this point of around 30 months, all of the animals in the cohort are dead. However, the animals that were kept at or near the point of starvation, like this animal here, you can see they have reduced growth, but by the time all of their companions are dead, they're still alive. So that was the first demonstration in the biomedical literature.
This is the study that Dr. Make-You-Gassy Furman refers to all the time. This is what his whole thing's based on.
Calories, and this was a severe reduction of calories, actually extends longevity. Now we know it works in a wide variety of organisms, and I'm showing you here in mice that the process is dose dependent. So if these are, now we're looking at survival, the percentage survival over time in months, and animals that are allowed to eat as much as they can consume, but a healthy diet, they die with a median longevity of about 2.5 years. However, if they're restricted, again, up to the point of starvation, 65% less food, same diet, less food, you can see how it pushes out both the median and the maximal longevity. These animals live longer. But they don't just live longer, they're actually much healthier, as if the basic process of aging had been delayed. So there are improvements in markers of health span, and we'll talk a lot about reduced fasting blood glucose, improvements in insulin sensitivity, and reduction in circulating triglycerides. They also have reduced adiposity, they're much smaller animals, and reduced blood pressure. And likely together, although we're not sure actually the cause, they have reduced onset and severity of the diseases of aging, namely cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, as well as cancer, which you might ask, what do mice die of? Mostly cancer, but even mice on CR die of cancer. So we don't really
So that doesn't help at all
know much about what the difference is. But clearly they live longer and they're healthy.
Now, I'm not going to watch this whole video. I've got the times written down here. I'm going to watch it to a certain point, get my point across, and then I'm going to just link these down below. You can watch them, do whatever you want.
Up until the time of their death, they seem to be disease-free. Okay, that's mice, but we know over the 100 years of this research line that dietary restriction or calorie restriction increases longevity and health span in a wide variety of organisms, from single-celled yeast through rodents and all triglycerides, blood pressure. And you can see at year 1 and year 2, all of these values were significantly improved, reduced with triglycerides, reduced with blood pressure. Active clinical trial carried out in the United States with about 220 middle-aged, relatively healthy individuals. They were aiming for 25% daily food restriction, and they measured a number of markers of health span, for example, cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure. And you can see at year 1 and year 2, all of these values were significantly improved, reduced with triglycerides, reduced with blood pressure. The other thing they found in this study is although they were aiming for 25% restriction, they only achieved 15%. It's very hard for people to do over extended periods of time.
Because it's nonsense. We're not supposed to be doing it. We're the only animal that think this is normal.
So then this brings to the topic of the day. What is the basis of calorie restriction? What is the nutritional basis? And what does it look like in practice? So this is a model, and when I refer to it, I often use it interchangeably: dietary restriction, calorie restriction. In fact, calorie restriction is on purpose a mechanistic thinking. It says that the reason this diet works is because you have an overall reduction in calories. And that's what has been thought, and many people still think. And so what it looks like is you have a normal diet with, let's say, 20% of your calories from protein, 10% from fat, 70% from carbs. And you simply reduce that daily or thrice weekly to this level. So 30% reduced, same ratio of macronutrients. You get all the effects I just described. But it's also possible that it's not really the reduction in calories. In other words, maybe not all calories are equal. And there's been quite a bit of literature in the last 20 years to suggest that protein calories count more in this process than fat or carbohydrate calories.
There you go.
So if that's the case, then one can envision you can have two diets which are fed ad libitum, but where you'll have a reduction of protein in the one. And here I have it set at 0 and replaced with carb, but obviously you can't do that for a lifetime. But if you do reduce it to some amount, then you can envision what it might look like. You'll have your normal calorie restriction, which is proven to be difficult for people over long periods of time, or you could eat as much as you want of low protein items, which generally we're talking fruits and some vegetables. So,
all right, there you go. So basically, this video goes on to explain why the starvation study really wasn't relevant, because the longevity was actually because there wasn't as much protein in a diet. And this woman's telling you to eat more protein and more fat. Fat really doesn't seem to have much effect on the body anywhere source that I look. So the McDougall, the fat you eat is the fat you wear, was debunked by T. Colin Campbell, I think it was, or is it Esselstyn? I don't know. They all kind of look the same, and or talk the same. And but the thing is the China study proved that they could turn cancer on and off with the amount of protein in the diet. This study on many different forms and formats and people and animals proves that the longevity of the animal and the actual health, their health actually improved comparatively to the starvation when they just took out protein out of the diet. And this woman, you know, if you watch this, you really get, if you watch that video, you really get a lot more out of it. And this woman's telling you to eat generous portions of protein, which are aging to the body, because the body can't handle them. It's toxic to the body. Not only that, she called sugar an acid, and with a pH of 7. I mean, come on, you know, piece this stuff together. I mean, I did it for you. You can watch this video. You can watch these source videos or whatever, but All right, and one thing that I forgot to mention in this is if you listen to this guy, he actually says that you can eat ad libitum, I mean, no seco, if, you're picking your ear, if you have no protein or very low protein. So it doesn't seem to matter if it's fat or if it's carbohydrates. It just seems to matter the protein is the one causing these issues. And that brings me to another thing. If you really think about some of the videos that I've made over this year about the potato studies where they did fat in potatoes and people lost weight like crazy, they had crazy good results. You know, maybe it has something to do with it because they usually use saturated fat, which if you saw the interview I did with Georgi Dinkoff, he talked about the fact that saturated fat is what we really want, but we're getting all the poly and unsaturated fats from the seed oils that they're not putting in everything. And you know, if you're an 80s kid or maybe even 90s kid, I think they used lard. They used animal fats to fry things all across the board, especially at the fast food restaurants. And you didn't see a lot of fat people, you know, in the day. It's only when they started adding these seed oils in that we started noticing a lot of issues and a lot of these preservatives. So that's something else to keep in mind. This has got to stop. And I found this woman too, because another thing that this Barbara O Neill is talking about is cancer is caused by sugar or fed by sugar. It's nonsense.
Can cutting sugar out of your diet stop your cancer coming back? The simple answer is no.
There you go.
Cells need energy to grow. Cancer cells and all the other cells in your body. And the easiest food source they love is sugar. And I'm not just talking about sugar that you find in cakes and pastries and donuts, but carbohydrates. Like cabbages, apples, pasta and rice. They are all broken down to simple sugars, and that's what your body uses to fuel itself. When you run out of sugar to use, the body digests your fat stores, and when you run out of fat, the body uses protein.
So carbohydrates is what the body runs off of. There you go. And it doesn't fuel cancer. So anyway, hopefully you learned something out of this. Share this video, talk to people about this video, do something with this video. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate comments in the bottom because there is a cult of almost following of this Barbara O Neill. She has to have some things right. And she has that certain way of talking that, you know, marketing people like. But wow. Wow. Anyways, that's it. All right, and that's it. There you have it. Share the video. This video, definitely, this woman, I think she's pushing some stuff that's very erroneous. And that's it. Like, subscribe, comments, questions down below like always, and I'll talk to you in the next one.